Nothing I need to tell a room full of stock traders they don't already know. Is there an over-under on whether we're going to trade down 500 points today? We taking the over-under on that? All right, so watch for tornadoes down there, says Chris. Really? Yeah, the weather is kind of funky now that you say it. Thanks for the heads up, buddy. Everything's good by you? Okay, so David says it could be better. I hear you. I hear you. Neil says, let's see. Google, sweet. Mark says, I found you on Twitter. Oh, yeah, I tweet. I tweet. Roberto asks, hey, Roberto, what does my narrative tell me now? Roberto, the same thing it's been telling me for a long time. Risk off. Buy yen, risk off. Near term, play the downtrend. Longer term, I'm getting a little opportunistic. Now, when I say opportunistic, I'm not picking a bottom. I'm not a bull. I've actually taken a little taste, and I mean a little taste, like a nibble on Fang. That's it. That's it. So my narrative has been telling me the same thing since we started the rollover on the Dow. Since the yen's been strengthening, I've been telling you guys for a while. Buy yen, look for opportunities to play the contrasts in yen strength against other currencies. So right back to the heat map. So that's what the narrative is, Roberto, sorry. That's what the narrative is right now. Take a look at the 1 month look back on the yen. There is no individual currency story stronger right now. I love this visual because what it allows you to do is, rather than I just tell you, hey, the yen's the strongest, you can actually see it for yourself. So from strength to weakness on these 7 stories, number 1 is the yen, then the US dollar, then the euro, followed by the Aussie, then the pound, then the New Zealand dollar, then the Canadian dollar. For a while, I was looking at my favorite tomato cans being the British pound and the Canadian dollar. And now that party is a bigger party. It's a trio. And now I've got the New Zealand dollar giving it some company. So there's the 3 tomato cans. My strength story, number 1, yen. Obviously, that's very much equities risk off dependent. Number 2, US dollar. I'm not wild about basing trades on euro strength or US dollar strength, quite frankly. I don't mind buying yen as the driver to a trade, but if I'm going to buy euro or if I'm going to buy US dollar, I'd rather the driver be one of these 3 characters here. So, Roberto, same narrative. Same narrative. Nothing's really changed. Yesterday was a rumble in the jungle, rope-a-dope. And by the way, what's been working best, and to be fair, Wednesday was a great short day trade for my YM range breakout. Yesterday, Thursday, was a great long breakout trade. And today, I got whipsawed. Got whipsawed to the downside. I got whipsawed to the top side. And then now it's broken down and stayed down. But I'm done. Once I get whipsawed, I'm done. I'm done. And that's okay because I've slayed it on Wednesday and Thursday. So Dory's taking the under. Lewis is taking the under. Yeah, taking the over under in 500. Yeah, you might be right. Although we'll see how we do when we emerge out of the lunchtime doldrums. So Wednesday was great. Thursday was great. And then today, yeah, whipsawed. And you look at Friday, not from just the end of the week, but you look at Friday within the context of a long weekend. You look, in the U.S., you look at Friday within the context of waking up to a market that was already looking at a Nikkei down 600 plus, 500 plus points actually, then a Dow down 300 plus points. And then you look at the actual clearing range. It was such a wide range. And there was a pretty good chance the market wasn't really going to do much beyond the range extremes because it was so wide. You end up with exhaustion at the range extremes when the range is so wide. You've run the length of the football field. Do you have much more left in you? It's just a matter of fuel in the tank at that point. So there's the narrative there. Same narrative I've had for a while. A lot of rain there. Yeah, it's just been kind of one of those miserable, rainy, damp, cold kind of days. David says, I'm in Malaysia. I hope the weather's better there, my friend. All right, David says, I usually don't stay up all night for the chat rooms, but with this market, I'm keeping awake into the close, 2 a.m. So you're in KL. Oh, very cool. That is a cool city. Very cool. Nice. So here's the thing, David, and I'll tell you, because you can look at the Asian session. I was looking at the Asian session last night, and I will tell you a lot of what I end up having to digest during the U.S. session starts with what's happening in the Nikkei. So being in Malaysia, you can watch that Nikkei. You can play some of these range breakout breakdowns in the Nikkei, no doubt about it. So, there is a certain amount of right now importance placed on what's coming out of the Asian session and what kind of mood the Asian session is in as we emerge from the 4 a.m. Eastern. Now, I'm on the East Coast of the U.S., so when I put these times out there, they're New York times. So at 4 a.m. when the Asian session closes, I'm looking at what the risk environment is, knowing that sentiment is going to wash up on the U.S. shores. And that's what's been happening. So, I want to confirm it, obviously, but absolutely. So, when you look at yesterday, and it's interesting, I didn't get to talk with you all yesterday, but this is something we talked about quite a bit in the Simpler Forex room this morning. And, a lot of my interest in the Dow, we have to at least respect what's happening with options expiration. That rope-a-dope with yesterday's rally. And I was actually looking at some different headlines where suddenly, all the reasons for why we bounced, where we were oversold, and the China stabilization, all this other stuff. Well, on Wednesday, nobody was talking about this. And certainly today, nobody's talking about it either. But yesterday, because the market was up, we looked for all the reasons to justify why the market was up. And I think, especially there in the SO room, what would you guys tell me? Options expiration. It makes perfect sense as to why we corrected the trend a little bit yesterday. And now, as if to punish the market for rallying 200 points, we're going to take those 200 back and tack on another 200, right? And that's what we're looking at here into the close. So if you told somebody, hey, you have to be long or you have to be short into a long weekend, you ask 10 people, you ask 10 traders, what do you want to be? I'd say most of them are going to tell you, yeah, I'd rather be flat or short. No bid. Nobody wants to be long. But I will say again, when you look at the weekly charts, I don't want this to be all sour stuff here. When you look at the weekly charts, I am taking, small bites of these apples here. Small bites of fang. I don't know. Too many teeth analogies here. FANG. I know you guys have been watching these in the SO room. We've been talking a lot about them in the Simpler Forex room because I really do believe if we start to see a turnaround, it's going to start in the NAS because of the heavier weighting of those four stocks. It's just a weighting conversation. Not often do I look to the NASDAQ for clarity on where the risk environment is ultimately going to go. But yeah, the tail's going to wag the dog here. So I'm going to look at the NASDAQ for insight into when and if we start going into, what are we looking for? We're looking for greedy bastard mode. When does the market really start to do that? And we're going to look to Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. So, but, to your point there, David, being in Malaysia, yeah, look at that NASDAQ, look at that Nikkei. Look at that Nikkei. I've been looking at the Nikkei during the Asian session before I call it a day here on the East Coast of the U.S. I have to. All right. And by the way, so in Forex, if I were to translate what being short the Dow is, let's translate that into Forex speak, if you will. That is to be long the Japanese yen. And nowhere do I like long yen better than those weakness stories that we just talked about. So we had an interesting conversation with the yen in the morning chat. And that was, one of our traders took a really nice play, made some nice pips in Canadian dollar versus Japanese yen. Now, the thing we worked on with this trader, and I was proud and I was happy that rather than staying hooked longer term to the yen strength story, which I still think is the longer term story, this trader said, oh, wait a minute, there's some intraday opportunities. Raghi taught me how, there's a trend intraday. Let me hop into the one pair that we've been looking at for a long time. But what I wanted to mention, and I'm going to mention here in this room, on those days that we do have a relief rally, a little bit of strength in the Dow, we're not going to get bamboozled, but we can get opportunistic. But that means we're going to sell yen, right? Just for a session, just for a little while, nimbly intraday. So sell the yen, but sell it against the US dollar. I'm not a big fan of the euro, but sell it against the US dollar. Sell it perhaps against the Aussie, maybe the euro. I mean, if we're only talking about a day trade, I guess I'm not that concerned. But yeah, US dollar, euro, even perhaps Aussie. Because if we're talking about risk on, the yen play is a short, right? Short yen. But on risk off, we're actually focusing on the bottom half of this, right? So if I want to buy yen, I want to buy them against the weakest counterparts possible. This is the real benefit of playing Forex, understanding and being able to capitalize on these contrasts. So on risk on, we get pockets of risk on. We're not going to get fooled, but we can get opportunistic. Sell yen, nimbly, short term, no attachment, right? Against US dollar, euro, Aussie. But when the risk aversion comes back, like it has, like a freight train today, buy yen against pound, New Zealand dollar, Canada. The counterpart changes, right? That gives you a better contrast. That gives you better pippage. And that's what we want to focus on there. All right, so Mark asks, did I see how the Canadian dollar went down even though the dollar went down? Oh, okay, so I'm glad you mentioned this. Did we talk about spurious correlations yet? Were we talking about correlations and causation yesterday? So I was talking about correlations and causations with a friend of mine yesterday, and this is hilarious. Did I show you guys this stuff? The number of people who died by becoming tangled in their bed sheets correlates with the total revenue generated by skiing facilities. That's a correlation. They're heading in the same direction. It's sympathetic movement, but one does not cause the other. We're looking for causation, right? So I think there was a correlation for a long time for a lot of reasons. Maybe it was a little bit of causation, correlation mixed, but we always have to double check if the causation is still there. Is one thing truly causing another, or are these things just happening to be occurring in a parallel manner? So for a long time, if we were optimistic on the U.S. economy, we were equally optimistic on the Canadian economy because the U.S. is Canada's largest trading partner. So good things in U.S., we're going to consume more. That's great for the exports in Canada. So that's where a lot of people looked at the connection between the U.S. dollar and the Canadian dollar. When you look at the U.S. dollar and Canadian dollar now, I think everything gets trumped by this narrative here. 100%. Everything gets trumped by this narrative here. So Mark, is there probably some causation, I won't call it a blind correlation, but is there some causation between crude and, between the dollar and the Canadian dollar, the US dollar and the Canadian dollar? Absolutely. But when crude oil, which I think is very impactful to the Canadian dollar, when the crude oil market is the main conversation, it trumps what's happening with that. So I think we can very much see a scenario where crude is going to drag the loonie lower. And the dollar, let's face it, the crude oil market has a definite trend, and there's much stronger, clearer psychology behind it. The dollar does not have a trend here, gang. The dollar's moving in a range. So who's going to have more, I think, psychological impact on the Canadian dollar? The crude oil market that has a very clear narrative, or the US dollar, which has kind of a strange, are they going to hike 2 times, 1 time, 4 times? Are they going to hike? When is it going to be? Choppy dollar story. This is a I don't know, right? Who are we convinced by? The certainty or the, well, maybe story? Really break it down to really simple, basic human emotions. Because when you look at every one of these candles on this chart, to me, I look at those candles, that is people. That is people. Who's more convincing? This? Right? Or the chop in the dollar. So please don't think that the dollar is a sell. The dollar is just in a range. And I do think we're in a range with a really nice uptrend line support. You can see here I've drawn it in. I think technically there's some interesting uptrend line support there. I'm more a dollar bull. I'd rather be, if I'm going to be married to a position, which I don't want to be, but if I'm going to be married to a position, I'd rather be married to the dollar long position than the dollar short position. It makes a little bit more sense when you think about the central bank backdrop. And to be a dollar bull is to be a euro bear. Let me ask anybody here, here's your test. If you are a dollar bear, that means, whether you knew it or not, you are a euro bull. And if you cannot justify a euro bullish position, you don't have a valid dollar short longer term. I should emphasize that, longer term. Day to day, that's different. I'm not committing to a continuation or organization of the trend. Right? That's fine. Day to day, that's fine. To just like the way we shorted yen yesterday for a little while. If you were looking at that risk on. Well, actually, I didn't short yen. I just bought the Dow. Did I think the Dow buy was going to be something I was going to look at again today? Don't know. Not committed to it. Brand new day. I'll reassess. When I think about the Dow short I had Wednesday, we talked about that Dow short a bit on Wednesday. By the time I got here to this room, my trades were already put on, and we had a little bit of a bounce. No problem. It was still a Dow short. But I didn't take that Dow short into Thursday. I don't want to carry that bias. Carrying that bias, especially in the risk environment here, the last 3 days has been dangerous. Has been very dangerous, especially when you looked at the options expiration, changing the sentiment for that day, and then today just taking all that back. So that takes me back to, again, the correlation versus causation. Mark, right now, sure, there's some causation dollar Canada, but it's mostly Canada crude. All right. Okay, so moving on here. Yeah, under means less than 500, Lewis. Yeah, if we're talking about the over-under. Yeah, that's what we're looking at right now. It could be very interesting as we come out of the lunchtime doldrums here. All right. Let's see, let me scroll down the list here. It's 95 in the city. Wow. I live in Florida. It's usually very warm. We have these crazy mild winters, but you got me beat there in KL, David. Absolutely. Wow. It's a furnace. It sounds it. Wow. Okay, so let's see. Joseph asked, do I have any Forex pairs I'm looking for entries on? So it's been a lot of the same stories that we've been talking about for a while. Where can I buy yen? I've been Joseph, for me, it's been less about a change in the pair, my watch list, and it's more about whether or not on some of these stories I need to go 240 or 480 in order to catch a correction. I think that's what's been happening, because the dailies on a lot of situations have been so over accelerated. These dailies have not given me a lot of opportunity. So I'm having to think about maybe getting a little bit more nimble. So same scenarios, same contrast. Can I buy yen against any of these? Can I buy US dollars against any of, well, mostly Canadian dollar, but I'm starting to think a little bit more about New Zealand and pound. When it comes to the euro, I'm really only Euro Canada. When it comes to the Canadian dollar, I'm mostly Euro, US, and Japanese yen. Where can I sell Canadian dollar and buy these stories up here? Okay, and where I'm a little bit more nervous, especially since we had the good jobs number out of Australia, is this is kind of smack dab in the middle, right? This cannot be a driver. So if I get into the Aussie, it's because I like the yen strength, the US dollar strength, or I like the New Zealand dollar weakness or Canadian dollar weakness. For a while, the New Zealand dollar looked like it was number one on the commodity currency story. I think it now has been trumped by the Aussie. And of course, you look way down here, the Canadian dollar story is just sadder and sadder and sadder. Okay. So I think Aussie 1, Kiwi 2, Canada 3, and this is the only one that I think about buying. Short and short. So there's pretty much my watch list. And what's happening, I think more specifically, is I'm having to go to the 240. I'm having to go to the 480 to find scenarios that are within proximity that we can catch up on. So 480 and 240. So yeah, those are the pairs I'm looking at. Those are pretty much all this individual currency stories and their contrasts that I'm looking at. And if you want to take a look at any of these contrasts and just kind of think about what I just showed you and look at your own, you can take a look at a heat map that I have posted there at Simpler Forex. Okay, so thanks for that question, Joseph. All right, so moving on here. Looking at some other questions. Yeah, it's pretty much just, for the most part, I'm flat. Right now, just so you guys know, I'm flat my Forex world. In my Forex world, I'm flat. I'm completely flat in the Forex world right now. I'm going to look to build some positions up next week. Right now, I've got a handful of futures contracts that I'm short, a couple ETFs. I'm still short copper, things like that. So I'm actually about as flat as I've been since last week. We rolled out of trades in Aussie Canada, New Zealand dollar Canada, and pound New Zealand. And I realize that those aren't necessarily sort of best of breeds for my individual currency stories, but walked away with some pips, and now I'm flat. The only pending order that I have out there, although it's going to get some company next week pretty swiftly, is the Euro versus Canada. That's it. So everything's been more or less kind of a follow-through. I like follow-through Fridays. I don't like fill Fridays unless they're non-farm payroll. Steve asks, am I kidding about people getting tangled in bed sheets and getting killed? Steve, I wish I were. This is, I'm not trying to be cruel, or this is an article, great article on the difference between correlation and causation over at Business Insider. It's hilarious and it makes its point really well. So here, someone asked me, where is crude going? Where is crude oil going? I'll tell you, crude oil is going wherever the per capita consumption of chicken is going. There you go. That's as good an answer as any. Where's crude oil going? Keep an eye on and this is mockingly trying to point out that correlations don't work. It's causation we're looking for, right? So, when we're looking for those knee-jerk reactions, be very cautious. Because if this were true, and we wanted to know about crude oil imports, I would just look at the per capita consumption of chicken. They correlate, but there's no causation there, right? Steve, I wish I were kidding, apparently. I didn't put these together. This is just hilarity. Do I still think Canada is going towards negative rates? I think they'd have to go to zero first. And yes, I think they're going to have a rate cut or two. So do I think they're going to negative? I don't know. I mean, I think that my Canadian dollar shorts and my interest in the Canadian dollar shorts will continue to work even if we just go to zero. We don't have to go to negative. All right. So Let's see what we got here. And I'm actually going to be cutting today a little short, gang. I don't know if I had told you guys, we had some flooding here in my house. Not anywhere near my office, thank God, because that's the most important part of the house. But I have some people coming in to take a look, and so I'll be cutting a little short here today. And quite frankly, I'm not doing anything other than some of the discussions that we're having right now. And if you're on my newsletter list, you'll get part 2 of my China story. So if you didn't get part 1, I'll have a link to part 1 in the newsletter. But if you're on my newsletter and you want to get part 2 of my China story and how I'm handling this volatility, and this is kind of still emanating from the China story, you can check that out here. I'll be sending that out, I think today or over the weekend. So if you get all logged in today, it should go out to you later on today. So there's the link for that. Muzanda asking about the PMRs okay, sure. For the South African Rand? Sure. Okay, so you're talking specifically, okay, sure, US dollar Rand? I should have it. Let me double check. I should have it. I don't know if yep, they do have it. There it is, bottom of the list. Here you go, my friend. Here's the hourly PMR for the South African Rand. And one of the things you can do, Mizunda, if you have the Jing, which I recommend everybody download. All my Simpler Forex peeps, you guys download the Jing. That way we can share videos and audios together. Jing and screencast is a great way to keep the convo going. So if you want to Jing this image, great. And then here is the daily. Very volatile. Very volatile. Check the spreads on that one. Exotic. Very volatile. Let's see. Roberto asks, what will be my focus on in Austin? Awesomeness, my friend. Awesomeness. Tall and awesome. Will it be to provide all attendees on FX or how to build a narrative, etc.? I think they're kind of one and the same. What I'm going to be focusing, I think we're going to be doing some live trading. So what I'm going to be doing is showing you the whole, how do I trade Dow Yen together? How do I trade crude Canada together? How do we tie up these macros and build a bigger picture? You know, why wasn't I short Yen yesterday? Why wasn't I picking a bottom? It's the narrative, right? Why did I take advantage of Yen weakness to buy into it? You know, all those types of things. So if you checked out were you at my Wednesday webinar, the 30th, Roberto? Did you attend that on December 30th? My Outlook 2015, 2016. Okay. It's going to be more because that's just what I do, you know? So it'll just be more of what I do in a live environment with literally some of the people that I love hanging out with most in the world. That's it. You know, I get to hang out with people that I just, when I open up, I'll tell you what, when I go to Austin and I walk into Henry's office and he's got his charts going and he's showing me things he's up to, I love it. When Bruce talks to me about what he's doing and the diagonals, or, you know, he sent me this cool update on the euro, I love it. I literally adore these people. I adore these. So I'm going to talk about exactly what I always do. And what's going to be great is there'll be the interaction, you know? So Neil's going to do his thing, you know? Chris is going to be there. Chris, I'm going to see you, right? In a couple weeks, buddy. Chris is going to do his thing. So it's good. All of us are going to do what we do. And then I think what's going to be neat is you get to sit and see who you resonate with. And that's really, I think, I'm going to be taking notes. I'm actually looking forward to attending a seminar as a student. I really am. I'm going to be taking notes. I'm stoked. I'm just stoked. So to answer your question, Roberto, you're going to see what I do live. I'll build up watch lists. I will show you how I set the trades up, how I find my trends, show you how I use my grab and wave, things like that. And we'll be doing it live, which is, come on now, the only way to do it, right? The only way to do it. So very cool. Okay, so moving on. What do we have here? Why is the Canada so weak now? Jess, 2 words. Crude oil. Crude oil has dictated the narrative for the Bank of Canada. And that's it. All right. All right, next up. No guts, no glory, no losses, says Todd. Yeah, when the markets are closed, I'm like a dragon slayer with no dragons. All right, let's see. Gee, if you want to know how I'm trading China, not just forex wise, but futures wise, even how I'm going to be opportunistic in the equities markets. Like I said, I gave you that link. I'll be sending that out later today. So yeah, I would just go ahead and that's my free video newsletter sign up. So yeah, I'll be sending that out via that. Cindy, I don't have a link. I'm going to send it out via email. So if you're on the free newsletter list, you're all set. The bed sheet. You know what? You don't want to know about the chicken correlation, Steve? That is far more awesome. Here you go, my friend. This is an old article from Business Insider. There you go. I think the chicken correlation is amazing. Target, Mark, Mark, I don't look for targets. I don't look, and that sounds so funny. I look for entries. I'm not going to guess at where the market is going to go to the upside. I just think higher. That's it. What I'm more concerned about, because really what happens if you get fixated on a target, you'll buy anywhere, right? And I'm not saying you particular. If I were to say the market's going to 149, you're thinking, well, it's only at 145.29 right now. Let me buy it. But how is it getting there, right? So what I'll tell you is I need a correction, whether it's going to be on the daily, whether it's going to be on the 480. I'm not interested in targets initially. I'm interested in where my entry is waiting. And that's going to be a matter of going down for the purposes of the runaway market that is the Canadian dollar weakness. That's likely going to be a 480 or 240-minute conversation, which takes me back to Joseph's question, which is great. What's my watch list right now? Same watch list, but it's the time frames that are changing. The time frames. Okay? So I know that doesn't necessarily answer your question. I don't have one. I think if I were to somehow say this is where the top is for the US dollar, Canadian dollar, I'm going to be wrong. But what I can tell you is if we were to correct down lower tomorrow and I get a fill at, say, 43.30, my upside target's going to be 145. So it's really in perspective of where I ultimately get my fill. Okay? So that's the story there. Brian says, what about me? Did I leave anybody out? Did I? Brian, I don't like to start on my deep respect for you because I get emotional. And I really don't want to lose it on a Friday in the chat room. But this is what you've done. Dude, come on now. I'm going to weep a little bit. I need a moment. I'm verklempt. Yeah, so where's the money going right now? Yeah, I think you look at the only green on my 4Extra here. 5-year, 10-year, 30 gold. Yep. Holy smokes, says Sean. Absolutely. As far as Netflix goes, I'm looking at the weekly. And yeah, I'm taking some heat, but I'll tell you what, I still like Netflix. I have some Netflix. I'm taking literally about $3 of heat on one position and about $8 of heat on the other because I'm in from 110.80 and 105.50. Is it where I want it to go? No, I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on the 100 level, but I do like having taken this very small taste in that zone. Okay. All right, gang. I gotta wrap it up here. I got some stuff I gotta take care of. So, as always, it's awesome to hang out with you guys. We'll be back on our regular schedule. Things have been a little nutty here. Yeah, I will hold through earnings, Brett. Yeah, I will. I'll let you guys know more about where I start to build a little more sizable position. But yeah, I will. What else? My SOers, I'll be here. I'll be here on Monday, same time, same station. My SFXers. Actually, I won't see you guys Monday because of the holiday, right? My SFXers, I will see you Monday morning. Okay? So, and I'll be here in the chat room on and off throughout the rest of the day. So if you do have any questions for me, I'll keep the rooms open, my SOers, my SFXers. So it doesn't seem to be too bad, Steve. Mostly some flooring. Yeah, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Steve. You're a gentleman. Thank you so much. All right, so again, if you want the newsletter, yeah, if you guys want to make sure you get that China stuff from me, it's a free newsletter. It's just what I do over there at Slimper Forex. So you can get that right there. And I will see you all on I guess Wednesday for the SOers and SFXers. I'll see you Monday. All right. You guys have a great one. Take care.